I visited the 5 high schools impacted because we're working on a project with related to technology and technology development as part of our recovery process for the economic development piece. I will tell you that one of the most fascinating things to see is the resiliency of the kids and the faculty and staff in those schools. I mean, nobody's complaining. Everybody's doing what they need to do to get kids through high school and get kids through middle school, and they're just moving along and they're making it go. The resiliency of the people as measured by those high school kids and staff and faculty is really amazing. So I think we're, my sense is we're doing, I would give ourselves a grade of pretty good. I think we're doing pretty good in the recovery process. Would all of us like it to go faster? Absolutely. Would all of us like it to already be done? Absolutely. But the process with which you have to go through to do it properly and effectively, for example, if we put a home back and we don't put it above the floodplain and we impact the insurance rates of an entire community, then we've failed in our recovery process. So I think we're doing pretty good, and from a time standpoint, people need to understand that as we approach the first year anniversary of this, that we're in one lap of a very long race, and we've got a long way to go. And I told a group the other day, we owe it to the people who lost their lives and the people who were impacted by this to do it right and do it effectively, and to do it in a way that we are a better state and we are better communities than before the flood happened. And as you know, we're dealing with communities that were severely impacted by the economic restructuring that this state's going through, and then they got this thrown on top of them. So we owe it to those people and to those, particularly those that lost their lives, to make sure we do this and we look to what we want to be 15 years from now, not what we were 30 years ago.
You mentioned this is just one lap in a long race and the economic state, but to try to leave it better than before, or perhaps an opportunity. Are you starting to see that to emerge a little?
Yeah, absolutely. And a great example is in Clendenin, at the old Clendenin Middle School, in a area that was 8 feet underwater on the 24th of June 2016. There is now an office for a software development company, Mind Minds, which has 11 of the 20 jobs that they've committed to that area. So who would have thought before the flood of last year that there would be software developers working in Clendenin, West Virginia? So now we've got an area that was flooded and just severely impacted where we've got software development work going on. And we believe that the potential for growth in that facility is potentially up to 40 to 50 people down the road. So that's a great example of changing who we are as a result of dealing with some really bad circumstances.
And you were talking before as well, I mentioned that I had talked to some of the emergency workers, and some of them said that they're pretty much back to normal. Would you say that that's pretty accurate?
I think that's accurate. I think we have counties that while there may still be a couple of homes being rebuilt or a business going back to into play, that they are pretty well back to where they were. But we also have counties like Nicholas County, upper end of Kanawha County, Greenbrier County, from Raynell over to White Sulphur, Clay County, who are still in that first lap of that long race.
The National Guard, the West Virginia National Guard, has been overseeing a somewhat newer project from FEMA, the demolition project. How has that been going?
It's going pretty well. We had a total of roughly 750 applications for the demolition program. I think we've got over 600 of those which have been certified to be eligible. I think we'll get closer to the 750 as we move along. A little over 300 homes, I think, now have been removed, and the great part of that is getting a phone call from, for example, from Habibi Mamone, who works the Neighbors Loving Neighbors piece, that says, "Can you get that home down faster, because Mennonite Disaster Services is ready to come in and rebuild that house." And then we get it set up so it's built above the floodplain, and we get it so that it's not impacting insurance rates, and we're ready to go. And we've got a lot of examples of that going on. The last time I talked with the folks from VOAD and Jenny Ganaway, we're in the hundreds of homes that are being rebuilt now, and that doesn't include the ones that have just been rehabbed. So again, I think we've made great progress, but understand that there were over 9,000 applications for FEMA assistance as we hit the height of this thing. So this is not something we're going to fix in 1 year, much less 2 years, and then throw in on top of that rebuilding schools. But I will tell you that the process, for example, at Herbert Hoover High School, they're well into the planning process for what their new school is going to look like. So we manage a lot of different extremes. We've got some that haven't, moved as fast. We've got others that are sometimes moving faster than we can keep up with.
And in sticking with the demolition program, does it seem particularly important in West Virginia? I know as a lifetime resident, it seems like the communities that I'm familiar with just have an abandoned building problem to start with. Has this been, you mentioned opportunities as well, has this also been an opportunity in that sense as well? It
has. We were able to work very effectively with the folks from FEMA and put some state dollars to the process. And in Richwood, there were I think over 35 homes that were already abandoned structures that they were working to deal with, related to making sure that the community continued to develop, that it didn't create drug and other problems in the community. And we were able to pull those together and be more able to cost effectively get those out of the way. So you're right, it's creating some opportunities for us to build a new landscape for the future for some communities.
With a little help.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to move on to lessons learned that we might be able to take away from this. I think immediately there were some discussions about it, and perhaps more things have emerged over the past year. But is there anything particular you think that West Virginians and we as a state or communities might have learned that might help us or other possible potential flood victims in the future?
Yeah, I think a couple of things as we continue to look back on what we did well, what we didn't do well. One of the things that we saw that we needed, and we have in the Guard have partnered with our first responder partners, is we're training a whole cadre of folks to do swiftwater rescue. We had the Guard folks and the high water vehicles. We didn't have the level of training that we needed on the swiftwater rescue side to as effectively partner with our civilian first responder counterparts. And in this case, that was a very important piece. Now, I will tell you that we improvised and we did what we needed to do. But part of my job is not just to look at the safety of the citizens of West Virginia in those responses. It's to ensure the safety of my guardsmen and the first responders and law enforcement folks who have to do that mission. And being better trained at that is clearly something that we need to work. And you're going to see a unique piece come about during the Boy Scout Jamboree, where guard folks who went through swiftwater rescue training are going to be partnered with their civilian counterparts that they were out on June the 23rd, 2016, rescuing West Virginians. They're now going to be providing the safety support to the Boy Scouts on the New River during the Boy Scout Jamboree. So that's another thing that's come out of this that's hey, we're a lot better than we were going into it. I think we, in the Guard in particular, have worked to leverage social media to more effectively during the derecho and other events understand what the needs of the people are. I will tell you that one of the things I want us to do a better job is managing some of the misinformation that goes out over social media, that somebody says, well, I heard that they're going to be doing this, or I heard that there's this thing over here. That's not necessarily the case. So being able to manage that, because when you have people in the traumatic circumstances that we had people in from this flood, and you create false expectations, you make it worse for them. So we've got to do a better job of managing that information piece and that communications piece. And as we see with all the things that are going on around us, you know, the social media has got its great benefits, and social media has got its great drawbacks. And so I think that's another piece. I think we're probably writing some of the next processes that will be used by FEMA and other locations related to the home demolition project we talked about. The other piece that we're learning, and it's new and we're going to be kind of at the forefront of, is the new mitigation rules that are out there that allow us to spend more on mitigation in the sense of we can build homes above the floodplain and try to keep communities intact. You know, one of the easiest things to potentially do in some of these cases is throw up our hands and say, hey, this community's been damaged so bad, let's just, let's just do like we did in some of the coal mining towns in the old days, and we'll just walk away. But that wouldn't be the right thing to do for us as West Virginia, or as for the individuals in those communities.
And saying that it's just too far gone, just give
right.
up. But you all, we're not giving up.
No. Well, you know, again, I go back to the Clendenin example. Mm-hmm. Software developers working in Clendenin, you know, if I'd have said that 2 days before the flood, somebody would call me crazy. But, well, now it's reality.
Back to the social media thing, you know, as a journalist, I guess, and a person who works in the media, I can't help but to wonder if this might help to highlight the importance of having journalists and professional, trustworthy journalists to get your information from, and pointing out to the public that you need to find a trustworthy source.
Absolutely. I think one of the other things that we particularly have been working with public broadcasting in West Virginia is during the next events that we have, I think, and we've talked about the need to embed reporters with Guard and first responders, just like we do overseas, and embedding reporters with combat units so that they can be that trusted source of what is accurate, what is out there. So I think that's another lesson that we're taking away from this, and it relates to exactly what you just described, in that social media has its advantages, but at the same time, social media also creates challenges, particularly when you're talking about making sure that you get true and accurate information out there, and people don't take that as the gospel without doing a little bit of extra checking behind the scenes.
What about managing donations? From the emergency service directors that we spoke to, several of them said that that was one of the lessons that they took away from it.
Yeah, that's another good one. We have a great partnership with the VOAD system, the Volunteer Organizations Active in Disasters. They're written into our state plan. The Guard is working on behalf of all the first responders for Homeland Security and Emergency Management to rewrite and update the emergency plan, and we're looking at how do we integrate that more effectively into the process. One of the positive things that happened is there were so many people from so many places around the country that were putting stuff to us, but it's hard to manage sometimes and making sure it gets out. So one of the things that we felt we needed to do is where we could, particularly because in some counties we have very small emergency management staff, is to try to centralize and then use the Guard and emergency management as the system to get things out to folks. So managing all those donations is a challenge. Making sure they get to the right people at the right time is a challenge. And it's no different than running logistics in a overseas military operation sometimes.
So, and you mentioned there's something that's, so in moving forward, how will that be managed? Will it be managed any differently in the future?
I think we will tweak the process to try to more effectively manage where we can do a couple of things. One is to centralize or regionalize distribution points. The other is to be able to provide excuse me, more logistical support to those local emergency managers who are just overwhelmed and have very small staff.
And social media, anything? I know we talked about the importance of finding people that you trust. Is that the basics of how to move forward and maybe do? Okay.
I think what we're going to do is we're going to continue to develop the process to embed reporters with us as we go and understand how to better manage messages that go out across social media.
What's been the biggest challenge for the Guard over the past year?
I think one of the unique challenges was having guardsmen who were impacted by the flood and trying to help those folks while you're trying to help other folks. And in some cases, I've got to tell people, you need to go home and take care of your stuff and let us manage this. And then once you get stabilized, you can come back. But I got a lot of people in this organization that will go help other people and kind of let their stuff sit by the side for a while. So that's a unique challenge in managing. You know, I saw it during the derecho with my colleague and counterpart Jimmy Jeanette. His house caught on fire, and Governor Tomlin had to order him to go home, and he looked over at me and said, "You make sure somebody escorts him to his house," because he was going to stay and do his job and let that other stuff go by the wayside. So I think that's a unique piece that we manage, and I think we as a state collectively have to manage the psychological piece of this for our citizens, but also for the first responders. You know, we have, from a Guard perspective, we were blessed to have an exceptionally strong chaplain corps. We do have psychological health providers that work with us, you know, whether it's related to PTSD. And PTSD from a combat situation and PTSD from a recovery situation, they can have the same level of impact. It may just be from different reasons. But I'll take, for example, the first responders who, we spent a great deal of time to ensure that we found that last individual of the 23 who happened to be a 14-year-old young lady from Greenbrier County. Those individuals that 2 weeks into this process that found her are going to be profoundly impacted for the rest of their lives. So you got to make sure that you're managing the mental health piece of this for not just the people, but for the first responders. There was the story of the elderly couple in Greenbrier County that still to this day, it's even hard to talk about it, but a World War II veteran who he and his elderly wife stood together, held hands with water up to here, and he had had heart problems and his heart gave out. So it's not just the family, it's the first responders that responded to that. And that's a challenging piece that we got to continue to work. But I think if we focus on rebuilding better than we were before, then that's part of the, I guess for lack of a better term, that's part of the medicine for healing this other stuff. And I think those, I look at it because I'm a military guy from this perspective. So here's a guy that survived World War II but didn't survive the flood. His expectation of the Guard and the military folks would be that we do the same thing that they did during World War II, and that is get the mission done. So I think that's what keeps us focused on where we need to go. I know it keeps me focused. I told somebody the other day I like to my wife laughs at me, I go online periodically, and there's a website called My West Virginia Home, and it has all these pictures of, Charleston when I was growing up in the 70s and early 80s, and I kind of go out and look at that periodically and say, okay, this is what we were. And when I grew up in Charleston, West Virginia, graduated from high school in 1979 and walked down Capitol Street, you could hardly get down Capitol Street for the people. So what I think we've got to do is we've got to figure out how we build ourselves back, not to be exactly like that in the past, but what can we envision ourselves looking like in the future? And it's much broader than just being an energy state. It's taking all those talents and turning them into other things and doing that on behalf of those people that have been impacted. So,
moving forward with these inspiring, you're focused on a mission, and you said it's a marathon, 3 to 5 years, putting things back, even better opportunities, things like that. What kind of things do you need? Are there additional things that you'd like to see move within, if you can comment on anything like that, or within the communities or government, or anything that you'd like to see happen that would be helpful in this?
I think just a couple of things. One is the continued support of the people who have been engaged with this. One of the heroes of this event, in my mind, are the faith-based organizations from across the state and across the country who have come in, and you pick the denomination and they've been here and they're still here. So keeping those people engaged and allowing us to keep that process going. The people who have been generous in donations, we've rebuilt a lot of homes already and are ahead of where a normal recovery would be because of the donations and those faith-based groups and others like Team Rubicon, which is a veterans group, that have come in and started just rebuilding stuff while we wait to wade through the bureaucracy that we have to deal with to get the money and get it in the right places in order to rebuild. I think that would be another thing. We're going to continue to work with the congressional delegation to say, hey, we've got to streamline the bureaucracy here to get stuff done. Now, I will tell you that the FEMA folks, I know that we in West Virginia weren't real happy with the whole federal bureaucracy because of what we've encountered related to the economic challenges we have with the change in the structure with coal mining and that piece. But the FEMA folks have been exceptional. They have gone above and beyond in West Virginia to make sure we need what we get what we need. You know, and I don't know that I'll get in trouble for saying this, but I think I owe it to the men and women of the Guard. Hopefully, by the time this airs on June 20th, we'll have a state budget, because I have to have a state budget and have to have some stability in that budget, not just to carry out the military mission for readiness, not just to carry out the emergency response mission, but now we've put on the Guard, because we volunteered for it, or I volunteered us for it, this recovery mission. I can't do that without stable budgeting process and the right amount of money. So we've got to have that in order to move this thing forward.
You can hear this story and more on the Inside Appalachia podcast. It's available on wvpublic.org or wherever you get your podcasts. That's Inside Appalachia. Get the podcast and you can listen on your own time.